A portion of this video is an excerpt from one of my other videos about adaptations. The original is in the description. Spoilers ahead for Sifu. At first, Sifu is a tale about vengeance. After a former student leads a gang to raid your home and kill your father, you seek out revenge by hunting down each of the 5 members at their domain. You fight your way through mobs of enemies and the main bosses, using kung fu and a special talisman that can revive you, but at the cost of your youth. How much of your life would you give to finally exact your revenge? Obviously, you yourself are not as invested in seeking revenge as the protagonist of the story is. It's not like the game itself went out, broke into your home, killed your dad, and then slapped a controller onto your hands and said, "You want revenge? Show me." Motivation varies by player, and personally I was motivated by closure. I simply wanted to finish the game, to beat all the bosses and roll credits. To some degree, the protagonist is also motivated by closure, thus our goals and selves are aligned. You're willing to forego your morals because this is just a game. I have to harm and kill people to progress, and it's fun. I'm not sure how fun it is for the protagonist, but they forego their morals to achieve vengeance. Regardless, our actions are the same, our morals are the same. At the start, you're fighting junkies and gang members, but by the end, you're fighting medical staff? You make it to the final boss, Yang, and kill him the same way he killed your father. You finally get your revenge, so roll credits, right? No. Instead, the game admonishes you and tells you of another way. It shows how Yang wanted to use the talisman to save his family, but was banished because of so. It also tells you that the way of Wuda is to fight until the other no longer wants to. And thus, the game restarts, and it's up to you to fight and spare all of the bosses. Except for everyone else, you don't gotta spare them. The ending surprised me because the game restarts so abruptly without any credits that it does not feel like an ending, more so a game over. I was so unsatisfied that I actually did go back through the entire game to spare everyone. It's not as bad as it sounds, since I could still use all the shortcuts and abilities I've unlocked. More importantly, my actual skills have improved since playing. And so, what initially took me 12 hours to complete now only takes me 2. It was tough to spare these bosses, and it wasn't because I was internally conflicted to forgive each boss. More so, I would have to consciously fight against my instincts to not execute a boss whenever this prompt appears.
Oh wait, I was supposed to save that. Oh, what? I didn't. Oh. Didn't even get a chance to spare him. Oh, nah. Dang it. Bro, I'm trying to spare you, I swear, but I got some like beam inside of you or something. There we go. Now I actually saved you. Or not.
After sparing everyone and ending the cycle of revenge, you can achieve enlightenment and finally, actually beat the game. Although it's the same game, it becomes a tale of absolution and an exercise of morality. What impressed me about the narrative was how it was presented rather than what was presented. Obviously, saying revenge is bad is not the most groundbreaking, paradigm-shifting message. You can reduce the story to such and be unimpressed. But having the player move towards vengeance and then offering clemency is what makes the lesson immersive and effective. Many players can be satisfied with just killing Yang and finish their playthroughs right then and there, despite never seeing the credits roll. I thought I could be satisfied as well, but the lack of credits bothered me and left me incomplete. Although it was for different reasons, I felt unsatisfied much like the protagonist after fulfilling our vengeance. We also gained the knowledge that each of the bosses have their own issues they suffer from. Yang, especially, just wanted to save his family, but lost his way and sought vengeance. That vengeance has now been passed on to us, the player, and the cycle will continue infinitely until we work to stop that vengeance. Whether or not we're actually driven by revenge, we still go through the motions and kill without hesitation. If the credits did roll after killing Yang, I probably would have stopped playing the game despite what I've learned. Sparing the bosses would have felt optional, an extra or alternate route for the game. However, because of the lack of credits, going back through the game and sparing everyone felt essential. I'm not just working towards an alternate ending, I am working towards the end. You have to go through the extra mile to spare, because it is harder to spare people than it is to hurt them. The tale is immersive because it allows and encourages the player to act upon better morals. The initial playthrough inculcates you to be as brutal and efficient as you can be. However, to attain the end, you must undo your brutality, to inhibit your impulses and to have higher morals override your actions. And evidently, I struggled with that. Sparing a boss had to be a conscious effort. I joked earlier, but it is hypocritical for the game to end when we can still kill the common enemies, even though it's the bosses that we have a vendetta against. It would be annoying though if the end of the game was like the gates of heaven and it says, oh, I don't deserve the credits because I allegedly pushed a guy off a cliff, or I allegedly stabbed a random innocent person. It seems I would have to take further extra steps to be as morally good as I can in Sifu, but then that's like following traffic laws in GTA. I wish there was a way for me to avoid all conflicts or to spare common enemies. However, the game locks you in and you have to fight, but not necessarily kill. Perhaps it's more so I'm taking the extra steps to kill, allegedly. The story of the game is also immersive in other ways. Much of the narrative is presented through subtle details, dialogue, and clues for the detective board. It seems vengeance wasn't the only reason for why the protagonist's father was killed. There are more talismans that are being protected by a group called the Guardians, from which the father was a member of. They believed these talismans were too powerful for people to use, that instead of being used to benefit all, these talismans would corrupt an individual and cause them to only benefit themselves. However, there is an opposing group, the Alchemists, that believed that the talismans were too powerful to not be used. The members vowed to retrieve these talismans if lost, and to benefit all with these gifts. Each of the 5 bosses are members of the Alchemists, or at least of a newer sect. It appears they went with a Machiavellian approach in retrieving the talismans, as they made sure that there was no chance of retaliation. Well, all but one. I guess Yang isn't completely unethical. Although they succeeded in retrieving the talismans, they failed to uphold their other vow. Each boss now uses their talisman to benefit themselves more so than others, and yet they're still unsatisfied. Fajar, for example, is suffering from an unknown illness. His powers allow him to grow plants, herbs, and drugs, but it appears that he cannot cure himself. Instead, he pulls a Walter White and creates a drug empire with his powers. Yang seems to have established the only place that truly helps others, but he still harbors much pain and is far from enlightenment. So it appears the Guardians were correct about how much the talismans could corrupt people. And although the protagonist wasn't initially motivated to uphold the beliefs of the Guardians, they might have actually went on to do so. This is moving on to speculation, but whenever a boss is spared, a trophy or achievement is unlocked by the player that states that they have received a talisman from each corresponding boss. Perhaps after sparing each boss, they've realized they're wrong and forfeit their talisman to the protagonist. And since the protagonist doesn't use a talisman like it's Rockman after each boss, they might have refused to do so. Although they do use the one talisman to revive themselves, so means to an end. After the credits, there is a scene that suggests that the protagonist has moved on to create their own school, perhaps re-establishing the Guardians as well. But if that's the case, does the cycle truly end? Honestly, what the Guardians should have done is just go down to Mordor and throw all the talismans into a volcano. If this power is too great, then destroy it. Unless the Guardians also doesn't want to destroy this power. Anyways, that's enough of speculation. This video was supposed to be about how immersive and unique the story of Sifu was, and how that cannot be well adapted into a film. To figure how that relates, I recommend watching my video about video game adaptations. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this one. I'd love to hear other people's theories and other lessons that can be learned through one of my favorite games of 2022. Again, thank you so much for watching the video. 25 years. With narratives like that of Sifu and Nier, it's important important to see just how unique the